For several decades now, Shonen Jump has been one of the biggest names in anime and manga. And right now, one of the biggest names in Shonen Jump is My Hero Academia. Kohei Horikoshi's breakout series has taken the world, particularly the North American anime market, by storm. Since its anime adaptation first debuted in 2016, it's become a fixture in just about every space where Western otaku gather, from online forums to massive conventions. And with Season 4 in full swing, it's showing little sign of slowing down. You almost can't get away from it, particularly in the context of big anime award shows where winners are determined by community votes. And while the sheer undying ubiquity of this franchise can be a bit frustrating if you're an anime hipster like me who wishes that people would watch more cool, obscure stuff, it's also, all things considered, pretty impressive, and not entirely undeserved. A lot of people really love this series, myself included, obviously. I've made more videos about it than Sword Art Online. But all of those have been about examining specific aspects of the series under a microscope. Today, I'd like to take a look at the bigger picture. Because I think there are a lot of reasons, good ones, that this show and the manga it's based on have experienced the insane success that they have. My Hero Academia is undeniably a little overhyped, but it also undeniably deserves at least some hype. I'd argue a lot. Personally, I think My Hero Academia is a great anime. I know, I'm so brave. And I'm here to tell you what's so great about it. Set in a future world with technology not far beyond our own, where a majority of people are born with bizarre superpowers and mutations called quirks, My Hero Academia focuses, as the title suggests, on the lives of students training to fend off superpowered crime as professional costumed vigilantes. More specifically, it focuses on Deku, a timid, weak boy born with no powers who nonetheless yearns with every fiber of his being to save people with a smile, the way his idol, All Might, does. All Might, the symbol of peace, is your classic spandex-clad crusader of justice. Super strong, super fast, and gifted with superhuman endurance, he's revered throughout the world as its greatest hero, like some sort of man who's super. But he has a secret. A battle with a powerful villain some years prior left him a shell of his former self, only able to work as a hero for a short time each day. In his off hours, he searches desperately for a worthy successor to carry the torch, and when he sees powerless Deku charge in to save his asshole classmate Bakugo from a villain he has no chance of beating, he knows he's found one. Lucky for both of them, All Might's One for All isn't like other quirks. Beyond simply granting super strength, it allows a person to store power within their body and ultimately pass it, along with the quirk, on to someone else. Several generations of these transfers gave birth to All Might's unbeatable strength, and now Deku has been chosen to inherit all of that power and the responsibility that comes with it, to take ownership of that legacy and become the new symbol of peace. It's everything he's ever dreamed of, but it won't come easy. Just acquiring the power demands a year of exhaustive strength training, and after that, he'll have to compete with some of the brightest teen quirk prodigies in the world as they train in combat, search and rescue, and hero PR at the prestigious UA Academy, all while fending off attacks from sinister villains who seek to destroy All Might and everything he represents. Unlike Dr. Stone or The Promised Neverland, Hero Aca doesn't really do all that much to innovate within the shonen anime formula. And unlike One Punch Man, it's not all that interested in critiquing the concept of superheroes either. But then, it doesn't really need to. Superheroes are fun. Shonen battle anime is fun. So it stands to reason that a well-made shonen battle anime about superheroes would also be fun. And My Hero Academia is nothing if not well-made. It has the fundamentals of that peanut butter and chocolate combo down to a science. If you're looking for big emotional fight scenes where young spiky-haired battle boys put all their feelings into their fists for the sake of honor, their dreams, and most importantly, their beloved nakamas, this show has you more than covered. Its battle boys and girls are award-winningly good, and there are few places where you'll see such fights so impressively animated. My Hero Academia is a Sakuga smorgasbord, showcasing some of the absolute best animation to ever come out of the studio that gave us FMA twice. How these characters move is impressive, but so is how they're drawn. One of My Hero Academia's greatest strengths as a manga is its art style, and I say this as someone who's spent literally hours staring at it line by individual line to make thumbnails. It goes beyond simply emulating American comics in an anime style. Kohei Horikoshi builds his characters out of big, expressive, cartoony shapes and renders them with rough, ink-splattered line art that gets messier and more urgent as the action grows in intensity. Blend that with angled layouts and heavy use of exaggerated perspective, and you get these beautiful panels where the characters just seem to pop off the page. It's remarkable how faithfully Bones is able to capture the manga's iconic style and that feel without letting it get in the way of their animators. So often with anime adaptations, it's one or the other. You get a faithful reproduction of the manga that moves like a slideshow, or a relatively smooth show that looks kind of like it, I guess. I mean, maybe it also looks kind of like a lot of other shows, especially SAO, but the designs are the same, kind of. Bones tries hard not to make those compromises, though. From Ouran Host Club to FMA Brotherhood to Soul Eater to Mob Psycho 100, they've basically always gone the extra mile in their adaptations to capture the unique character of the original work's art. And that's especially important for this series, because Hero Aca throws a lot of different designs from all over the cartoon spectrum into one big blender, and the combination wouldn't really work in anything other than this messy comic book style. Even the Vigilantes spin-off manga doesn't quite get it right, and while they do dodge around the problem in the main storylines by using mostly original characters and more anime-style heroes from the main series, whenever All Might shows up, that boy just ain't look right. The anime nails a really tough character design challenge right out of the gate, and if it hadn't, I think a lot of it would have fallen flat, especially the fights. But it's not just the visuals that make those fights so good. As I've hopefully demonstrated through my Animele deep dives into 4 of them now, one of which, covering Deku vs. Bakugo, was just released from copyright jail, so please go give that a watch when you're done here. This series has a real knack for setting up fights that have high personal stakes for everyone involved, where every combatant has both a goal to accomplish and something to prove by fighting. This makes the villains feel driven and dangerous, while simultaneously making it all the more cathartic to see the underdog heroes come out on top. Through strong direction and great panel layouts in the manga, the series excels at creating a tense, thrilling feeling of push and pull between both sides of any given battle, gradually building toward these triumphant crescendos where the animation, music, art, and acting all peak in harmony to send our hearts soaring into the stratosphere. It's powerful stuff. Hero Aca also features a lot of great creative fight choreography, though its protagonist doesn't always do the best job of showing that off. Because Deku's whole thing is breaking through his psychological and physical limitations to win the day by the skin of the teeth, his fights, especially the early ones, are often determined by simple bursts of raw, destructive power, which isn't all that interesting. Before he starts zipping around like Gran Torino with full cowl and using his shoot-style kicks, his style of fighting is very conventional, straightforward, as is All Might's. And while both of them do strategize in combat and make use of fancy footwork, neither of them really taps into what I think is the core appeal of crazy shonen anime fights, seeing creative, unique, and very specific power sets clash with one another and trying to figure out how one might triumph over the other. That dynamic is what makes the stand battles of JoJo, the jutsu trickery of Naruto, and the alchemic reactions of FMA so fascinating to watch and so fun to speculate about. And while I personally disagree, I can see why the relative lack of them led some shonen fans to label Hero Aca's fights as boring early on. Fortunately, there are plenty of other heroes at the Academy to pick up the slack, and the series' premise allows for an essentially infinite range of wacky, incredibly specific superpowers, from making things weightless by touching your fingers together, to sending and receiving sound waves through biological earphone jacks, to having hair made of super sticky grape balls, to sweating nitroglycerin. There's a lot of powers I've never seen before here. And whenever the characters who have those powers get their time in the spotlight, the show has a lot of fun putting them to creative use. Even the more conventional superpowers usually come with an interesting twist, like how Ida's super speed is limited by the heat capacity of the exhaust pipes in his legs, or Kaminari's light lightning has the side effect of frying his brain at higher voltages. Those limitations force these characters to think outside the box a bit in combat and prevent the series from rehashing ideas that Western comics have already done to death. As a result, the series is at its best, at least action-wise, during big events like tests, tournament arcs, battle royales, and massive villain attacks, where every hero has a chance to play their part and square off against an evenly matched opponent or two. It gets even better when allies are able to mix and match their abilities synergistically, and conversely, when heroes are forced to work with others whose powers don't complement their own, that can put some interesting hurdles in their way. Of course, most of the heroes in My Hero Academia are students, naturally enough, which means that they're only just beginning to learn how to use their quirks. And that conceit allows the series to handle power scaling in a different manner from many other shonen anime. Instead of powering up by learning new abilities or changing forms, Deku and his friends increase their efficacy in battle by honing the abilities they already have, augmenting them with tools, and finding new applications for them. Deku achieves his full cowl power-up not by undergoing some intense emotional struggle or unlocking some hidden potential he never knew about, but rather by changing how he thinks about One for All, seeing his power as energy that he can channel through his whole body rather than a force that he unleashes from a specific part of it. Conversely, Bakugo, already an innovator in how he uses his explosions to fly, unlocks a new super move simply by reducing the area of his blast to increase the force behind them. This makes it feel particularly rewarding to see these characters grow by making every new move seem like a hard-earned reward for their efforts. It also further encourages nerdy theory crafting about how each character's powers might evolve or be creatively applied in the future, and nerdy theory crafting is something a lot of weebs love. It's the bread and butter of many communities and creators that focus on shonen anime, and Hero Aca was wise to tap into that market. Now, without going into spoilers, the manga has recently introduced some different, more conventional vectors for character progression that have the potential to undermine this dynamic somewhat, but those vectors do still follow the general logic of how quirks work, and so long as Hero Aca makes those changes rare and hard-earned and keeps tying them directly to major changes in the characters themselves, I'll be happy with the new status quo. I did really enjoy that last big arc. But I do think that change is still worth noting and maybe warning you guys about, because at the end of the day, this is the kind of show that lives and dies on the strength of its action. Which is not to say that Hero Aca is dumb or that it does nothing interesting with its setting and premise. That's just the kind of show it is. But that said, My Hero Academia does actually have more going on under the hood than you might think, thematically speaking. Amid all of its big, cool superhero fights, the series explores the tension between a distinctly American brand of liberal individualism and the collectivist ideal that forms the core of Japanese culture. This tension is embodied in its core concept. In Hero Aca, the American-born individualist icon, the superhero, is put to work for the good of society through a very Japanese system of corporate and government bureaucracy, designed to both incentivize and regulate superpowered vigilantism. The series' central question, what does it mean to be a hero, aims to find an answer that will resolve this tension. Is a hero someone who fights for personal glory, inspiring others with his greatness? Someone who serves the people to his own detriment? Or something in between? Of course, this isn't the only big shonen anime to run with such a concept. One Punch Man has its own take on the idea of a hierarchical superhero licensing program, presenting a world where competition for top spots in the hero rankings and the glory and financial benefits those spots provide takes precedent over saving people for a lot of heroes. And compared to One Punch Man, I do think there are some blind spots in My Hero Academia's exploration of these ideas. While it does acknowledge that individual heroes like Endeavor can potentially be bad people, for example, in 253 chapters and counting, it hasn't really touched on the possibility that such bad people might co-opt the power granted to them by the hero licensing system for their own ends. In this world, or at least within Japan's hero system, bureaucratic tyrants and self-interested faction leaders like One Punch Man's Sweet Mask and Fubuki don't really seem to exist. The system is represented as being mostly functional and resistant to high-level corruption, which can't really be said for any real-world policing system, so in that respect I would say the series comes off as a bit naive. But covering the same ground as One Punch Man would make Hero Aca a little redundant, and to its credit, it does acknowledge that such systems can create problems even when when they're functioning as intended. The perverse incentives that drive hero work end up motivating many pro-heroes to behave selfishly, chasing fame and fortune first and helping people second. This makes many young idealists feel disillusioned, some, like Stain, violently so. In the Vigilantes spin-off manga, we also see how it can leave lower-income areas underprotected, allowing villains and local crooks alike to act with impunity, and leaving local volunteers like the Crawler to pick up the slack. What's more, the restrictive nature of hero society plays a major role in making villains out of outcasts and weirdos like Twice, Spinner, Magni, and Toga, and the worship of heroes as these exceptional individuals who make the world better so you don't have to is shown to make common people more complacent and less willing to go out of their way for others or the greater collective, which creates a lot of little cracks in society through which unfortunate people like Tomura Shigaraki can easily fall. A consistent theme among the series' rogues gallery is that society has failed most of them in one major way or another, and by framing their motivations through that lens, My Hero Academia manages to make the actions of its antagonists comprehensible without necessarily excusing them. Shigaraki wants to use his incredible power to break the world that broke him. Stain wants to use his to rebuild that world according to his ideals. Neither is in the right, but we're shown enough to understand where they went wrong. Interestingly, the social order has failed many of the series' protagonists, too. Hero Society doesn't offer a lot of opportunities to quirkless kids like Deku. Ochiko's family has to endure economic hardship just to give their daughter a chance at success. Shoto's family suffered through years of abuse thanks to his father's single-minded pursuit of the #1 spot. Bakugo's ego and anger are both the product of a society that has told him over and over that his power makes him better than other people. Mineta is just allowed to be outside, unsupervised. What the fuck is up with that? And let's not forget the ultimate symbol of Hero Society himself, All Might, who's been used up, worn down from wannabe Superman to Flashpoint Superman by the world's existential need to perceive him as something more than human, something more than he is, which has also left the world teetering on the brink of collapse, clinging to a single fraying lifeline, because nobody can really be All Might, not even All Might, but he tries anyway, right up until it damn near kills him. The UA students do too. And that's the difference between them and the villains. Instead of lashing out or tearing things down because shit sucks for them, they do what they can with the advantages their unfair world has given them to make shit suck a bit less for everyone else. If enough people operated on that principle, as the next generation of heroes is clearly being raised to do, maybe their world wouldn't need to cling to a monolithic and fragile symbol like All Might anymore. But now I've gotten into theorizing about where the series could go from here when there is plenty of philosophical ground left to be explored in both the anime and the manga. And the point of this video is not to dive deep and fully analyze the underlying message of Hero Aca, but rather to highlight all of its strengths. And I think the fact that it's exploring the impact of social inequality and asking fundamental questions about the foundations of society, framed through a medium and a genre that general audiences and kids seem to like and understand, is a major point in its favor. I like it when stories, especially cool, fun, accessible stories, push their audiences to think more about important things. Of course, it is equally important for these stories to be cool and fun and not get bogged down in pontificating about those things. That's my job. A good anime gives people good reason to get invested in its underlying ideas. And one of the best ways to go about that is by getting us invested in characters who are affected by them. Deku's a pretty good one to start with. His polite, soft-spoken nature makes him a likable underdog. His nerdy hobby of researching and analyzing superpowers gives him at least one thing in common with your average shonen anime fan, and the emotional journey that he goes on as he learns to believe in himself is really powerful stuff. But he's far from the only great member of this cast. My Hero Academia doesn't have the deepest cast of characters in the world, but it does have one of the biggest and most varied. The concept of quirks allows for an absurdly wide array of creative, wacky character designs, ranging from animal people in both furry and kimono mimi varieties, to living comic book panels. There are 40 named, unique, distinctive characters just between the two first-year classes at UA, and another 20 among the faculty and other students we've met so far. All of the hero agencies and rival schools we've been introduced to so far have also brought with them at least a handful of their own memorable characters, and let's not forget about the kids' parents. While most of these characters aren't explored beyond a surface level, they do all, at the very least, have clever, defining surface-level gimmicks. Every recurring character has a clearly defined personality, and more than half of Class 1A has undergone some kind of substantial character development, as have several characters outside of their class. This detailed character definition goes far beyond just writing and acting. The animation does just as much to convey what these heroes and the villains they fight are all about through their body language. Long as the series has gotten at this point, it certainly has had plenty of room for character development, but still, it's far from easy to create this many characters with instantly recognizable designs, let alone write them without having their personalities blend together into an incoherent mess. And to do all that while simultaneously serving up a number of viable rivals and antagonistic foils for Deku and even a few of his classmates, well, that's pretty damn impressive. Large, diverse casts like this are a defining feature of many big shonen battle anime these days, a lesson likely learned from the successes of juggernauts like Naruto and One Piece. And I think it's a major part of the genre's appeal. Kids, the target audience for these stories, also have a wide range of often vibrant personalities, so having a lot of different characters increases the odds that viewers and readers alike will find someone in the cast with whom they can identify. And My Hero Academia is pretty good at making likable characters and giving them chances to shine, be it by taking central roles in the story, or failing that by doing cool things to support the central players. That's not to say that the way the series handles its characters is entirely flawless. Hero Aca has some of the strongest female character designs in the business, for instance, and I think the personalities that Horikoshi has attached to those designs are really interesting and appealing, but when it comes to actually, using those characters to do things in the story, I think it's fair to say that he's come up a bit short. Sure, the girls do get to beat up villains and do other stuff, but usually as part of the B-plot of a story that focuses on one of their male classmates. This also means that the show hasn't had all that much time for direct romantic interactions between Deku and his ostensible love interest, Ochiko. A lot of their love story to this point has been defined by timid flirting and longing glances from afar, along with occasional collaborations on big school projects, which is how a lot of high school romances go. It's just not all that interesting to watch, and it doesn't give me much reason to root for them as a couple beyond thinking they look kinda cute together. And if I'm being honest, he kinda looks cuter next to Froppy, what with the matching colors and all. This is supposed to be an action series first and foremost, so it is probably sensible to keep romance at the periphery, but even in that light, the romance in Hero Aca comes off as a bit shallow. And that's a shame because in a few scenes, like Ochiko's tearful phone call with her mom and dad during the sports festival, Horikoshi demonstrates that he can make us feel things, powerful things for these characters. On that note, the bromance, on the other hand, is very strong with this one. I can point to Deku's relationships with any of his friends or mentors, but there's also Bakugo and Kirishima, Eraserhead, and Present Mic. This series is kinda held together by strong bonds of male friendship and camaraderie, and those relationship dynamics tend to be really fun. There's also an atmosphere of supportive sisterhood among the girls in Class 1A, and their interactions with each other are plenty cute, which I suspect is the point. Now, good heroes are nothing without good villains to fight, and on that front, Hero Aca does not disappoint. Its rogues gallery is varied, inventive, and menacing as all hell, particularly the core members of the League of Villains. But from Stain to Overhaul and beyond, every villain outside of that group leaves a distinct impression all their own, through their fighting styles, their designs, their ideologies, and the impact they have on our heroes and the world around them. The series is very good at tying its villains into both the ongoing exploration of its core themes and the development of its heroes, so pretty much every battle, be it big or small, against the supervillain Yakuza or a YouTuber who's too big for his britches, every battle feels like it matters. And you kinda need that in any great shonen battle series. That said, My Hero Academia isn't just a great shonen battle series, it's also a great adaptation of a great shonen battle series. One of the best such adaptations of all time, I'd argue. And I believe its enduring popularity has just as much to do with the way that Bones and director Kenji Nagasaki chose to adapt the manga as it does with the quality of that manga itself. See, prior to this last decade, pretty much every major Shonen Jump manga got the same treatment when it came time to make it into an anime. Instead of being made for a conventional 13 or 26 episode season order, big properties like Naruto, Dragon Ball, Bleach, and One Piece were produced in perpetuity, essentially, with new episodes airing every week for years on end. Which is great if your goal is to fill weekly broadcast slots and keep a brand in the public consciousness, but less than great if your goal is to make the best anime you possibly can out of your source material on a consistent basis. Anime episodes typically cover more plot in a week than a short manga chapter does, so it wasn't uncommon for these shows to catch up to the comics they were based on, which led to drops in production quality as big fights had to be stretched out and animated on tight deadlines, and storylines had to be padded out with flashbacks and filler to rebuild the chapter buffer. Around the middle of the last decade, likely inspired by the earlier successes of Sword Art Online and Attack on Titan, a lot of bigger shonen manga adaptations began bucking this trend. Tokyo Ghoul, Food Wars, Seven Deadly Sins, Haikyuu, Maji, JoJo, Bungo Stray Dogs, Noragami, Assassination Classroom, and, of course, My Hero Academia all arrived in shorter, more consumable seasonal packages with additional seasons already in production as the first ones wrapped, ready to keep that hype train going. The advantages that this approach gave the show were obvious from the get-go. Every fight in Hero Aca, no matter how small, impresses with its animation and direction in some way. And what's more, it doesn't have to cheap out on dialogue scenes to make that happen. And the seasonal format gives it another huge advantage that I think makes for an even more compelling pitch to your average shonen anime fan. This is a show with all the potential hype and action of Naruto, Bleach, One Piece, and Dragon Ball before it, but none of the filler. Well, that's not strictly true. There is some anime original content in My Hero Academia, but the difference is that most of it's actually good, and a lot of it actively makes the show better. Where the manga often focuses squarely on what Deku and his rivals are up to, the anime often takes additional time to show what their classmates are doing at the same time, fleshing those characters out and making them feel more like heroes in their own right. Those underutilized female characters especially benefit from these additions. Froppy got half an episode to herself, and the girls get as many hero moments as the boys do in the movie. None of these are massive additions, and it's not like Hero Aca would be bad without them, but by and large, I think they do improve the show. And those improvements were only possible because the nature of this adaptation allows Studio Bones to look at entire chapters as complete stories and pace them accordingly. Working from mostly finished manga arcs instead of ongoing stories published on a schedule that basically demands they be partly made up as they go along allows Yosuke Kuroda, the show's writer, to pick out a satisfying endpoint for each season in advance and then work backwards to fit the preceding manga chapters into equally satisfying, hopefully self-contained episodes, often focusing on specific characters and conflicts. With that done, he's then able to figure out which episodes need a bit more footage and where the season might benefit from a lighter, self-contained episodic break from ongoing storylines, as well as what elements the stories that are being told that season are missing so that those elements can be injected into the filler content. All of this means that My Hero Academia's story feels tighter, better paced, and more focused than most of the big shonen anime that preceded it. If you're marathoning it, the way that it ramps into major battles with slice-of-life stuff at the start of each season can feel a bit slow, but once it gets into things, it's hard to put down. And not only has it been able to keep that pace and quality up for over 70 episodes now, on top of movies and OVAs, it's improved season over season. Okay, some people might argue that's not true for Season 4, but I think that mostly comes down to the overhaul arc being the slowest part of the manga, especially before its climax. The anime's doing the best it can with that material, as it always has, and because the break between seasons gives its staff time to see what is and isn't working and tweak things, its best has gotten better. The most noticeable jump in quality came between Seasons 1 and 2, and in part I think that's because the manga itself improved a lot starting with the sports festival, but at the same time, The anime increased its rate of chapters adapted per episode from 1.6 to 2, which made it feel a lot zippier. And the show's visuals have just kept getting slicker and slicker as its animators have gotten more and more practiced at drawing these characters, and its American comic-inspired aesthetics have been more refined. There are definitely benefits to weekly production. It tends to provide more stable employment for animators if it's managed well, which is really damn important, and it can be great for looser, less plot-driven anime like Pokemon Sun and Moon. But when it comes to making serious manga adaptations, Hero Aca and Attack on Titan's approach just makes for a better product. And I think the series owes no small part of its success to that factor alone. Clearly, a lot of anime producers do too, as Black Clover is the only big new shonen manga adaptation that hasn't followed their lead. There's no one thing that's made Hero Aca the success it is today. There rarely is when franchises get this huge. It has an inherently appealing premise that it executes on exceptionally well, with likable characters, interesting underlying themes, a cool setting, and remarkably strong fights. And that can take an anime a long way. But it also got very lucky. It came out at just the right time to capitalize on the superhero movie boom and the streaming anime boom, and it was picked up for adaptation right when the industry began taking a new, more consistent approach to long-form adaptations. This show helped to cement a business model that is going to define how new anime are made for years to come. There is one last piece of the puzzle, though. My Hero Academia is a well-made, formulaic shonen anime, and since a lot of people really like the shonen anime formula, that's worked out pretty nicely for it. But saying that doesn't mean much if we can't answer a related question. Why do so many people like this formula? What is it about shonen anime and manga specifically that resonates with so many kids and adults from seemingly all walks of life and all corners of the globe? I could go into a lot of detail on that point, and in a future video maybe I will, but in brief, here's my take. The world that today's kids are growing into just isn't the one that we or they were promised growing up. Technology and human capabilities are constantly evolving, but in many ways our societies and cultures have failed to keep up. Old, heroic symbols designed to prop up the social order have become cracked and faded with time. The students reading My Hero Academia now are set to inherit a world that's a lot less stable and a lot more dangerous than ours is today, a consequence of past generations' failures to fix the broken systems running it. In the face of all that, it's hard not to feel like it's naive to envision a brighter future for humanity, but kids are nothing if not naive. They're also clever, resourceful, defiant, and capable of far more than we give them credit for. And My Hero Academia, alongside Dr. Stone, The Promised Neverland, Boruto, Black Clover, and all of the great shonen anime and manga that preceded them, is sending its audience one simple message over and over again, in many forms. Children have the power to save the world. That's a notion I personally find a lot of comfort in. It's a big part of why at 27 I'm still a sucker for these, call them what they are, serious, well-made children's cartoons. And I'm speculating here, but I don't think I'm the only one who needs a dose of that shonen anime optimism from time to time. Young or old, sometimes we just need cause to feel a little hopeful about something. And through its emotionally charged fights and character arcs, Hero Aca excels at delivering that feeling on demand. At the end of the day, My Hero Academia isn't some masterwork, though it does contain a lot of work from many master craftspeople. It can be a bit shallow and predictable in places, and interesting as many of the ideas and characters it presents are, it doesn't always do all that it could to explore them. But it is really good at doing a lot of things that, for a variety of reasons, make a lot of people very happy. Its premise compels imaginations to run wild. Its diverse roster of characters gives people heroes they can cheer for and relate to. Its epic climaxes have a way of injecting hype directly into the pleasure center of your brain. It's a good time. A consistent, reliable good time that pays off the time investment it demands with some incredible high points. And yeah, maybe it doesn't deserve quite as many awards as it's gotten, but I think it does deserve to be celebrated for that. I'm Geoff Thew, professional shitbag, signing out from my mother's basement.